Thank you for listening to the podcast. If you like what you were listening to, please subscribe to Fans Assemble. And if you can, please give us a rating. Do it for the audio world. They need you. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Fans Assemble. And we probably played the intro where we talked about comic books. Where I tell you we talk about comic books, movies, MMA, other sports, but something we didn't list down is boxing. No, we're not going to talk about Deontay Wilder's last fight. We're not going to talk about Andrew Reese's last fight. Well, we're here to talk about Jake Paul, the problem child, fighting Anderson Silva, the former UFC champion and overall legend. And here to talk about it today with me is Mike. And I brought on Mike. If you listen to our MMA podcast, we always have him on because he follows the sport very well. But I believe in my heart there is no better person for this show, for this episode than Mike, because he's been following Jake Paul's career pretty much since he went pro. And we're about to get into who we think is going to win, our reactions to the announcement, and what we think the fight's going to look like. And I'm going to give you guys a little bit of an intro of what's going on with this event. So it's taking place October 29th, this Saturday in Glendale, Arizona, at the Desert Diamond Arena. Jake Paul is 5-0. He fights out of Cleveland, Ohio, 6'1", orthodox. So he is a right-handed fighter versus Anderson Silva, who is fighting out of Sao Paulo, Brazil, the Spider Silva. He's 3-1 with 2 TKO wins. He is 6'2", and he's southpaw. And I believe this fight is being held at 190 pounds cash weight. And a little bit of background, Jake Paul, he's coming off of his 2 fights against the former UFC welterweight champion, Tyron Woodley. So the last one he won via, I believe, KO. Yeah, it's officially KO. And the one before that he won by split decision, and then before that he fought Ben Askren to win by TKO. And then Anderson Silva, his last fight was against the former UFC light heavyweight champion, Tito Ortiz. And then he defeated, and then before that he beat Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. And so basically that's the event. And Mike, what did you think? Because we all had different reactions when this fight was announced. What did you think when you heard that Jake Paul was going to be fighting Anderson Silva? As a Jake Paul, someone who's been following Jake Paul, did you think this is the right step? Oh, this is a bad move for Jake. This is too soon, or is it about time that he fought somebody like this? What did you think when the fight was announced?
Well, I didn't expect this. This definitely wasn't on the short list of especially like UFC legends or champions to have fought. So immediately to me, what was the thing was that this is going to be his most difficult fight, and that's really the key. My expectation was that Jake Paul was going to face some sort of lower level, like professional boxer who specifically is a boxer, which he was supposed to. But for a lot of different reasons, and there's a lot of
he was matched with like Tommy Fury and
Rahman at the Garden that got scrapped, whether it was weight issues, whether Dana liked to conspire that it was they didn't sell enough.
Dana White has his conspiracy, yes.
Maybe he's right, but I was expecting someone more aligned. I mean, this Fury fight was dodged, whatever. Just something that isn't going to happen when it was supposed to twice. But I think Anderson Silva presents his most difficult fight, and that's the most important thing for him to do is win a fight of increasing difficulty. And you notice, all right, so he went from fellow content creator online to a retired basketball player, Nate Robinson, who unfortunately just came out. He's suffering from kidney failure. So best of luck to him, and hopefully he can, get out of that and hopefully live, a healthier life. And then he moved into Askren, who we all know is not a striker or a boxer by any means. Onto Woodley, Woodley,
and then power, but he's not really like a
right. So now, what's the key difference to Anderson Silva? outside of just his excellent UFC career. We all know how great Anderson Silva was. Not to take anything away from Woodley or Askren, but they're not Anderson Silva.
Even now, he's like I believe he's 40 he's in his 40s, Anderson, but even now I would say he's probably better than those two in boxing.
Yeah, and that's the thing. He has experience boxing. He's doing it a little bit more. He's been into it. He's had a couple fights in the ring, so he's gotten a little bit used to it. Been able to hone his craft. He's gotten victories, and that's what makes this the most intriguing fight. Because the main criticism is, oh, Jake needs to fight a boxer. And while he's not fighting a career-long boxer, he's at least now fighting someone with real experience in professional boxing fights. And this creates a real dilemma because now it's like, well, what's actually going to happen? It's like I was decently confident in Jake, like going back to the Askren fight. Like that was when and even then, like I didn't have a lot of confidence. But after he put
Yeah.
down, after he sat down through the 3 hours of concerts and got to the, fight,
Yes.
um, he put down Askren, and some people were like, oh, it was stopped too soon. Askren was just taking a dive for the payday.
Yeah, the
You know,
dive.
which, look, um, people are going to have their conspiracy theories and people are going to try and ridicule someone who, quite frankly, is totally like blowing up the orthodoxies of the sport. Um,
Hmm.
he's really, really like, and I can understand if you're a boxing purist and you truly just love the sport and its formatting and its history, like I could see why you would despise Jake Paul.
Yeah.
But the number one thing to me is not only like, forget himself, but he's creating economic opportunity for a lot of guys to
Yeah.
earn a nice final paycheck, after their careers have
Hmm.
kind of reached their plateau. Um, and that's always good to see. One way to look at it positively. But
Also, he just makes more headlines for boxing in general. I like to contribute. I think he contributes to that as well.
you'd like to hope, right, that the people who tune into Jake Paul for the entertainment and the shock factor also end up watching other boxing as a result. Maybe
Exactly.
they get into it. Like I said, it's not a total negative. Like I said, if you're a purist and you're a very conservative person into regards to how promoters should promote themselves and the steps they should take to building their career, and especially a lot of fighters like spend all this time training and going through amateur fights and low level pro fights for not a lot of
Hmm.
money, and then you have someone like this who just kind of like immediately is like,
Yeah, main eventing. He's like 5-0.
right, he's right on
Yeah,
Showtime. He got on Showtime already.
I'm
He's
sure he's getting
making.
paid more than other 5-0 boxers. Yeah.
So it's one of those things like, I could see the opposition, but at the same time, like there are positives for the sport that can come out of the career of Jake Paul. I think a big problem too going right now, to me, as someone who's been watching him, and I kind of just more of like the entertainment factor.
Uh-huh.
Um, and I kind of love seeing the negative animosity towards him, like the people who are
Okay.
rooting for him
Yeah.
to fail. Like I always like someone who generates controversy because that's ultimately how things get better and prosper, right? Because like, if you want to see the sport change in one way or you want to see it stay the way it was, then ultimately it's someone's going to have to rise to the occasion and someone's going to have to walk out of this with the momentum. And all great ideas and all great things don't survive long without discourse. So I think at the same time, having someone like this from the outside totally like shake up the atmosphere of the sport um, will only serve to make boxing better for those who have always loved it and cared about it and followed it and enjoyed it and participated in it, because then it makes them realize what's so great about it to them, right? And
Hmm.
it's very like all combat sports, whether it's um, the honor and tradition of fighting another man or woman and getting in there and all the training and hard work and grind that it is to build a successful career in these kind of sports, the damage you do to your body in the process. Not even just from the fights themselves, but the weight cutting and all these different things, like the time away from your family and the time away from other commitments and the sacrifice. So like all those things can be appreciated more when you see someone come along that you feel is disparaging that, right? And that's only
Hmm.
going to help your opinion and feelings grow stronger. So, for all the boxing purists and all the people who really hate what Jake Paul's doing, um, I think he should just be your motivation to support the sport more and love the sport more in all its
Hmm.
other arenas where you truly love it. And it should light a fire in people like to really be motivated to protect and defend the sport they love. Um, and I noticed one thing too, like you see a lot of people like I have friends and I know people and I read it online too, just people commenting on Twitter and all these different places. Like you have all these people with Jake, like basically sitting here like saying about how he's not like he's a disgrace to boxing. And I'm like, you never watched boxing in your life. Like I got one
Yeah,
friend and he's
there's
sitting there
definitely
like,
way worse people in
yeah, like
boxing.
I've got one friend who's like, Jake Paul's a disgrace. He needs to fight a real boxer. This is a disgrace to boxing. I'm like, when did you ever spend a dollar or even a second of your time watching
Yeah,
boxing? Like,
I'm never watching boxing again. But you never started.
right, like I'm like, wait a second, but so there's also that, like that's comical to me, but um I do think it's interesting, this whole thing. And I think it creates, you know,
A lot of
positives and
eyes.
negatives. Yeah, it's positives and negatives. And it's but going back to the fight, I think this really is one of those situations like, is Jake Paul actually going to lose? Like
I
that's
thought the
my thing.
same exact thing.
Like at this point, it's like if he didn't lose to Woodley, like is he really gonna lose to any UFC fighter in a boxing? Even if it's like a split decision, like narrow decision, like
Yeah.
and he gets beat up and looks vulnerable at times, like the first Woodley fight, like is he really gonna walk out? Like because then this whole thing was for nothing. Like if he just loses to Silva, and I said like, how does he bounce back from that? I feel like
Yeah, I know what
he
you mean. Like,
doesn't.
this is not how the story should end.
Right, like he's already running out of steam, like amongst me and my friends who like him. Like he hasn't fought in a while, right? And there's been all these different things, the fights getting canceled, and guys backing out.
Yeah.
And it's really just kind of like, well, you're gonna fight or not? Like we need to see.
Yeah.
And
And
there's
some
only
of the
so much,
ideal fights are gone. Like the Fury one, right? That was the most ideal. Now, like you said, it doesn't seem like it's going to happen.
right? And like my main thing that I love about these fights with the UFC guys is like I said, just to let them get paid. Like you want to see guys get paid, in all aspects of life. But sport promotes a unique opportunity for people with talents to make more money than the average person, and all the money you make, even if you accelerate to being a champion in the UFC, like you can always make more, right? And it's always so it's kind of like you
Yeah,
want to
it's
see.
good for both sides.
Yeah, but you want to see someone, continue to get a payday because, like I said, you're going to get older and you're going to have needs, and some of that money might be gone, and um, because you got to sustain yourself for your whole life after this. You retire from the sport. So even with a couple $1 million or you've made, you got to make it last. So and to see continuity, like you know, these are this is an arena I think where people can separate the tradition from the
Yeah,
spectacle.
yeah, it's for like I think what you and I are looking at is like it's entertainment. I mean, there's still like the sport part of it, of course, but at the end of the day, we want to be entertained a little bit at least. So that's what this
Like
is.
I think you can separate the Jake Paul fights from real traditional boxing title
Yeah,
fights and rank
like we're not gonna be
competition.
like, all right, he wins and he fights Canelo. Like, no, we're not gonna
Like,
do
that's what
that.
I'm saying. Like, like these are totally separate, and it's the same sport, but it's a totally separate entity. And I get these are professional fights; they're counting to a pro record. Um, but I think at the end of the day, you have to separate these things from each other. And if you do that, I think you can find a healthy appreciation for both.
Mhm.
But my thing is like, if you hate the guy, right, and you hate Jake Paul, like, why are you patronizing him? Like, why are you buying the fight to root against him and you're disappointed every time? Or why are you spending your time and giving him views on YouTube and giving him clicks on Twitter and giving him the platform? Like, that's the thing. Like, someone like Jake Paul is also like only fueled by like that, the amount of people
Hmm.
he pisses off, right? So it's like all the
Yeah.
people out there who are like rooting for him to lose and get his, his butt kicked, watch
Well,
him
he
get
is the
him.
problem child, so
Yeah, and like that's also the thing too. Like it's kind of like it's basically boxing with the characterization and dramatization of like
yeah.
professional wrestling.
Yeah,
You know
like
what
these
I
are all
mean? Like,
people we know. These are all celebrities, kind
right, like
of.
it's basically
Like a soap
that's
opera,
the
kind of.
case. Right. It's a show.
Yeah.
And obviously Jake Paul's ambitions, whether it's just money or whether like he is trying to build towards something like bigger in boxing. I mean, I don't know how
Hmm.
like long he's gonna do this for. That's the real thing too. Like,
Wait, let's get with this. You're moving past the fight now, Mike. Let's stick to the Silva fight. So you're leaning towards. So we'll get back to that. What's next for him? What could be for the future?
yeah,
But so what? So how do you think he beats Silva? Like, how do you think the fight looks like?
I had mentioned it before. I think this is gonna be like the original Woodley fight.
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
Like I think he's gonna have rounds of vulnerability where he'll get pushed up against the ropes and he'll look kind of poor and tired, like especially in the
Hmm.
middle rounds. But I think he'll recover. And I think it will be interesting to see too, because like he's obviously investing heavily in training. Like he's not
Yeah.
not working hard. I think he's doing enough to like try to get better and improve. He is putting
Hmm.
in work. So I think the main thing from the start is looking at like how much better does he look,
Yeah, I do.
right?
I do think he's
Like
gonna look a lot better than the
right,
last
like
time.
if he doesn't look drastically improved, then I think that is actually the worst thing for him. Like he needs to
Yeah.
show that he actually is improving in technique and ability. So if he comes out looking a lot sharper and like totally different than the Woodley fights, I should say, then I think maybe there's a finish lined up, but I just don't see Jake losing, and I just don't see him knocking out Silva. So I kind of just think this one's
Okay.
in the
So,
middle, like
okay.
the original
Yeah,
Woodley fight.
I see your
Um,
logic.
and it'll be a tight decision win, and he'll walk out still undefeated. It'll be a little unsatisfying,
That's funny
but
because
I mean, everyone wants to see someone get knocked out, right? It's especially in a
especially
thing
with
like this. Right? For this to be a show, it needs a finish.
yeah,
You
this
know,
is what the celebrity boxing should be about, right? Like people
right? You want to
getting
see it,
hurt and stuff like that.
right? You want to
Uh,
see a big finish attached to these things.
yeah, yeah. We want some like a storyline, some drama. I actually think I'm actually very similar to you. I think it's gonna be similar to the Woodley fight too, the first one, where like Jake's gonna look good. I know his game plan. He said is to put a lot of volume in front of Anderson to make him feel like the age difference between the two of them, which could be kind of dangerous because we watch Anderson Silva forever. Like he's very
Right,
dangerous as like a counter striker. So I think so that means Jake would have to be in his face, but like not committing too much.
right.
Which
Well, what I want to say too is like, okay, we're also looking at like how Jake comes out. Is he technically better? But then it's
yeah,
also like, how seriously is Anderson taking the fight?
yeah, I was thinking that too. He could just
So
be
that's the
joking
first.
around the whole
That's
time.
right. That's the second part of it. So it's like, because if Anderson really tries to slug this guy, he's gonna do it at times. Like it's gonna be unavoidable. Like he's just that good of a professional. So it's just a matter, I think, of Jake's situation too. Like how badly does Silva want to finish him?
Yeah, I think so too. I think if Anderson comes in like kind of like being playful, you know how he does that thing where like he's like, come on," and he's like waving his hands and like running at guys. I think that could like get him into trouble. But then again, like because we've seen Anderson do that, and he gets caught sometimes. But then again, like Jake, he may be like, remember like you saw the picture of like him and Logan. beating Anderson when like they were like 13 or something.
Yeah.
And then I was like, if you're Jake, like we're fans of Anderson, and you see Anderson Silva running at you, you're oh crap! Or like in the UFC, like he just knocked the guy out after this. So I'll
Right.
be like you said. I think Jake has to improve, like just be a little bit more seasoned and a little bit sharper. Of course, that would be the key for him. So that's why I came to the conclusion as well. I think that I do believe Anderson. He will. I don't know play with him, but he'll kind of like treat this as like fun because him and like Jake are kind of like seem like very friendly to each other. And whenever Anderson was very friendly in the fight, he kind of like just coasted a little bit. And I think Jake may throw more volume than him, and then uh, and then maybe Anderson will pick it up in the middle, but then it's gonna be too late, probably. I think so. That's why I agree with you. I think Jake Paul's gonna win via a very small decision. I can see Anderson getting like a finish, but I just think like you said, like we have many more fights to do with Jake Paul, so I don't see that this and the Anderson thing will slow him down unless it's like super dramatic and he gets knocked out. So I kind of
Right.
agree with you. So you were getting into the I have a question. You and I are both picking Jake Paul to win via decision, and Anderson is of course is a very viable guy to win. Of course, he's old. He's a little bit bigger. He's a lot bigger than Tyron and Ben were. He fits the weight class a little bit more. Of course, he's a real striker. He has good footwork, unlike those two, and of course the experience and the calm and things like that. But if Jake were to win, right, he's going to level. That means he's kind of leveled up from before, which I don't. That could mean like you thought he was good and now he's great, or he was okay and now he's good. But if he wins, do you think we will eventually ever get a? And this, I ask you this question as a friend. Do you think we'll ever get Logan Paul versus Jake Paul?
Well, that's definitely on like a fantasy list of mine.
Yeah, it'd be funny, right?
In the world of something like, obviously in the world of boxing and MMA and combat sports, it's obviously very difficult to overfight. You have to, a lot of guys do fight multiple times in a year, and Jake was doing that. Um, but at the same time, you have to focus on self-preservation. You can't get too carried away with it. You also need to avoid oversaturating your market. And I think Jake will still be a draw, and Jake versus Logan would absolutely be a draw. But you just have to be careful about overdoing things and being too much of a show.
Yeah,
So,
that may be it,
um,
right? That may be too much.
yeah, like that, and do like two brothers really want to like fight each other?
Yeah, is it worth it? Yeah, it's
Like,
true.
the money at stake and the things like that could make it so. But um, I think it's one of those things that would be awesome to watch.
Yeah,
I don't know how
like the terms
realistically
of like the excitement for the fight.
that will happen. But I mean, it's definitely on the short list for like Jake Paul's future possibilities, win or lose. I definitely feel like loses this fight to Anderson Silva, then I think he's gonna need to just try and like suck as much money out of boxing as he can,
Yes,
and
immediately
not
goes
worry
on his
about the quality of opponents, and just instead focus on making every penny he can before it's over. Um, but if he does win the fight, then I think he needs to stay focused and committed to facing actual fighters. I mean, he probably really does, after Anderson Silva, need to face like a legitimate boxer, even if it's a lower level one. Like how someone like, but then that becomes an issue of draw. So it's like that
You
might
gotta
have been
find a
the
balance.
problem.
Yeah,
Right, that might have been a problem with the Rahman fight. Like, but a big part of the reason, like a lot of like, for example, like a lot of UFC like, loyalists are gonna tune into watching Anderson Silva, Woodley, guys like that. Like they're gonna want to watch it, whether they're paying for it or not is another story. But they're gonna be ears and eyes glued to it, paying attention. And there's a lot of people who are a real interesting thing. Like I wonder if people in Brazil are like really into this.
yeah, because they was always into Anderson, but this is like a
Yeah,
different deal, I guess.
like I wonder like how much like foreign like interest. That's something I haven't really looked into. Like before, like someone who's from another country, like Anderson Silva. was facing Jake Paul. I'm just curious, like, what kind of like interest there is outside America.
Yeah,
And
that's
I'd be
true.
interested
Yeah,
to see
I didn't think
like
of
how
that.
much like Brazilians pay attention to this fight. But because Brazilians are interested in, obviously Anderson Silva's from there, but a lot of times there is a lot of interest in what goes on in America. Um,
Yeah, especially with
and
sports like
yeah,
this.
so like that's something to pay attention to too. So like, is that another idea for like Jake Paul? Like, try to focus on facing guys from like international markets next. Like,
Mhm.
there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of business and marketing that goes into this, and but the main thing first, right, is like win this fight and then focus on
Yeah, of
tomorrow.
course. Like I want to think about like him versus Nate. Like as we know, Nate's not under the UFC contract, but like you
Well,
said, like he
that's
has to
another
win
one.
this.
Like, Nate Diaz is a guy who's like got a million things he could do next, so he's in like a prime position to make a lot of money,
Yeah,
which is good for him. But you
I think
know,
he's gonna pick this if he can.
yeah, I think
You
that's
know,
probably
yeah,
the easiest payday you can get, um,
yeah.
in terms of just. But it's just a matter of what he's got on his bucket list and what
What does he want to
opportunities.
do with the money? Yeah,
So it's like there's a lot of things, but like we said, see what happens with the guy in front of you first, and then I mean, look, the thing for Jake is that like there are people who genuinely like him, like and are rooting for him to succeed,
hmm
like me, for example. Um, but at the same time, there's more people that want to see him fail and want to see him go away,
that's
or,
perfect. That's what he
or
needs.
just think he's cringe. So, like I was saying, even like if he loses to Anderson Silva, even if it's like avoiding a finish, like the embarrassment of losing is really gonna rain down on him, and he's gonna have to adjust and figure out how to like navigate that kind of world. Like I don't know, does a loss mean the end of boxing for him? That's another thing we have to think about.
Yeah, I always think about that too.
Like, does he stop once he loses, or will he try to keep going? Um, there's a million different questions, and I think that's the real appeal to this. It's freshness. It's the idea that we could see some things we never would have imagined happening.
hmm
Um,
You know,
and it makes
I
it
think
fun, and it makes it interesting. And
yeah, I think I'm gonna make an announcement right now. No matter what happens, most likely if Jake wins, we'll do this. But after the fight, we'll probably have a post-fight show. We'll talk a little bit about like if he calls someone out and stuff like
yeah,
that.
we got
Because
obviously there will be a big aftermath and fall out of this.
yeah, exactly.
So I
And,
think there's a lot to synthesize about it
mhm.
and ponder. But like I said, we got to see what actually happens in the ring where it matters the most.
All right, so that's the end of our preview and pick show for Jake Paul versus Anderson Silva. Me and Mike, we gave you hopefully a good rundown. Basically, if you didn't know anything about Jake Paul versus Anderson, now you're all caught up. You know what to expect in the fight physically. You know what to expect. Everything going outside the ring. Please like and comment and subscribe. Who you think's gonna win as well? Tell us in the comment section below. Please check out our other Jake Paul video where I break down the more intricate and subtle parts of his technical game. And watch out for more of our content. See you guys next time. Bye. Thank you for listening to the podcast. If you like what you were listening to, please subscribe to Fans Assemble. And if you can, please give us a rating. Do it for the audio world. They need you.